By the 5th year of my marriage to my alpha husband, he brought home a beta girl. All it took was her soft plea, "I don't want to be the other woman," and he forced me to erase his mark. He didn't know? I would die on the operating table. Later, I was reborn, on the very day I had been marked by my alpha. Stumbling through the rain, I ran out of the estate gates. Overhead, a familiar, mocking voice cut through the air. "What's wrong? Your alpha couldn't satisfy you, so you ran all the way out here." I clutched the sleeve of his uniform, gasping for breath. "Please, help me." Omegas are like gilded canaries kept in the hands of nobles, and I was no exception. The moment I came of age, I was used as a tool for a political marriage and sent into the Gautier family. When I first met my alpha, I thought he was gentle, refined, powerful, and reserved. My heart was full of him, my world revolved around him. On the day he marked me, I believed he was my one and only, and I gave myself to him completely. Gautier was always busy with work, often staying late at the military headquarters. As usual, I waited for him in the bedroom. For me, waiting had already become a habit, part of being his Omega wife. When he finally pushed open the ornate door, cold air and the scent of alcohol drifted in with him. Seeing that I was still awake, he smiled, polite and elegant as always. From behind his back, he produced a small bouquet of jasmine, freshly picked from the garden. He had a habit of bringing me flowers after work. We were used to each other's little rituals. I could sense that his rep period had arrived. Just as I tilted my head to bare the soft skin of my neck, he called my name and gently brushed his fingers over my gland. Then he whispered the cruelest words I could ever hear. "Jasmine, let's get your mark removed tomorrow, all right?" His lips brushed against my neck, again and again, almost tenderly, as if he were reluctant to part with what he was about to destroy. I went pale. "Why?" I asked. His eyes flickered, light and dark, like a storm on the verge of breaking. Then he took my trembling hand, kissed it softly, and murmured in a voice that sounded almost like a curse. "Please? Jess has decided to undergo genetic modification. If it succeeds, I'll finally be able to mark her. You've never refused me before." I shut my eyes in despair. I neither nodded nor resisted. He grew rougher, anger seeping into his movements when I gave him no response. My gland bled under his biting kisses. Satisfied, Gautier admired his work, then whispered against my ear, "Good girl. We'll go wash it off tomorrow." When I was taken to the research institute, Gautier had already returned to the military. Before he left, I heard him tell the doctor, "Be gentle with her. She's afraid of pain. Erasing a mark is agony." The needles went in and out of the gland at my nape, tugging at every nerve like 1,000 threads on fire. My fingers dug into the white sheet beneath me, gripping until my knuckles turned white. When the final injection entered my skin, I felt as though my entire soul had been stripped clean. Lying weak and hollow on the hospital bed, I reached back to touch the nape of my neck, empty, smooth, and cold. That place had already been cut away. Outside the laboratory window, snow began to fall, rare, heavy flakes crashing down like shards of glass upon my broken heart. I remembered the day I first met Gautier. Father had been discussing business with the Gautier family, and he came along with his father, General Gautier. I hid by the stables, watching from afar. The air smelled of sunlight and wet earth after the rain, the horses flicked their tails lazily. I sneezed. Gautier, dressed in a white suit, walked over to me with a gentle smile in his eyes. "Need some help, miss?" he asked, extending his hand. I stared at him for a moment before shyly lifting my gloved right hand to take his. "Father later told me he will be your alpha one day." My heart had leapt with joy. He treated me kindly, we never argued. I truly believed it would last forever. Until the day he brought back a beta girl from another star system. She had long, glossy black hair, bright, innocent eyes, and a small, delicate frame, so much like an omega that anyone would have mistaken her for one. But she had no scent, no pheromones at all. Gautier introduced her to me. "Her name is Jessica. She's from a distant galaxy." I nodded and said I understood. That night, for the first time, he didn't hold me as he slept. He left the light on, pretending to read. In the middle of the night, he left the room, and never came back. Soon after, half of the jasmine in the estate garden was replaced by roses, because that girl didn't like jasmine. I stood in the shadows of the corridor, watching the sunlight fall over them as they stood together in the garden. Sometimes, she would lean close to his ear, whisper something, and take a rose from his hand, smiling sweetly. It looked like a painting, so serene, so cruelly beautiful. My nails dug deep into my palms, pain was the only thing that kept me from collapsing. A maid came and draped a shawl over my shoulders. "I don't want to be the other woman," the girl's voice trembled with desperation, as if she might cry at any moment. All right, Gautier murmured, lowering his head to wipe away her tears with tender care. I stared at him for a long time, then turned and went back to the empty bedroom. I was just an omega. A canary locked in a gilded cage. There was nothing I could do but watch as my alpha destroyed me for another woman, pushing me into an endless abyss. I wondered if Gautier would ever regret it. Forcing the mark away. Cutting out my gland. It was like carving out my heart. When the medical staff came in, their steps were careful, cautious. One held a scalpel, another, forceps. I lay half reclined on the white bed, and four in my hand, and stared silently at the doorway. Gautier arrived from the army, his uniform still damp from snow. He couldn't even look at me, he turned his head aside, his fist clenched tight. "Jasmine," he said hoarsely. "Jess's surgery failed. She only needs one more gland to survive. Could you?" My face went white. I stared at him in disbelief. "So?" I asked quietly. He opened his mouth to finish the sentence. I laughed before he could, shoulders trembling, voice shaking. "One person can't have two glands," I said softly. "Just like no one can have two hearts." He didn't know. The gland he had ordered to be transplanted into the beta he loved, was mine. The failure, was also mine. How could it not fail? After all, the beta he loved had always despised the scent of jasmine. In that instant, I saw something flicker across Gautier's ever-calm face: shock, panic, disbelief. He rushed to me, lifted me by the shoulders, pressed his palm to the empty space where my gland used to be. How could this be? How? "Mr. Gautier," a nurse called urgently from the doorway. "Miss Jessica's condition is critical. Please, you must come at once." His attention snapped away. He tucked the blanket around me gently, almost tenderly. "Be good," he whispered. "Wait for me. I'll be right back." But he never came back. Not that day. Not ever again. Waking up again was something I never expected. I had returned, to the very day I was marked by my alpha. My body was burning with heat, the kind that came with the onset of estrus. The room was empty. No one had come. I gritted my teeth and pushed myself out of bed, forcing myself upright despite the pain. I had to leave this place. Holding on to that single conviction, I stumbled through the halls of the estate. The servants I passed looked at me in disbelief, but no one dared to stop me. I ran until I reached the front gates. And there, I crashed straight into someone's strong, steady chest. Just as I opened my mouth to apologize, the man chuckled. "What's wrong? Your alpha couldn't satisfy you." The voice, it was familiar. A voice I hadn't heard in years. I looked up. "Stephen. Don't look at me like that," he muttered, taking a slow, deep breath. His usual careless demeanor vanished in an instant. I didn't know what kind of expression I had. All I knew was, I was in pain. I needed an inhibitor patch. Because of the arranged marriage, all of my inhibitors had been confiscated. "Please," I said, almost begging. "Help me." I saw his shoulders rise and fall in a barely audible sigh. My heart sank to the bottom of the abyss, bracing for rejection. But then, he lifted me effortlessly into his arms. My face pressed into his chest, and his pheromones wrapped around me like a protective shield. "Don't regret this later," he murmured. Then his teeth sank into my gland. A rich magnolia scent exploded within me, flooding every inch of my nerve endings. My head went light, my consciousness on the brink of shattering beneath the force of his mental strength. But just as I was about to lose myself, a soft, warm breeze swept in and enveloped me. It carried with it a faint trace of jasmine, mingling with the magnolia, wrapping around me like silk. When I came back to my senses, his hand was wrapped around mine, our fingers tightly interlocked. I clung to him desperately, as if I were a fragile paper boat about to be torn apart by a storm. Soaking wet, floating and sinking, I finally sank all the way down. When morning came, I touched the spot on my neck now flooded with potent alpha pheromones. A tingling warmth climbed up my spine. And then a hand gripped mine firmly. The culprit sat at the edge of the bed, gazing at me with obvious amusement. "So," Stephen said, toying with my fingers, "have you figured out how you're going to repay me?" His other hand gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. I stared at him, dazed. His eyes began to show a rare, pitiful hint of grievance. "Do you need me to help you remember last night?" I immediately pulled my hand away and slapped it over his mouth. "I remember," I mumbled, flustered, as I rolled myself back into the blanket. "You want me to repay you?" "You make it sound like I was unwilling," I muttered. His fingers poked at the covers, one jab at a time. Then, "Stay with me. Forever." I couldn't see his expression when he said that. But the Stephen I remembered, he had never been this serious before. We'd grown up together. Fought, bickered, annoyed each other. I didn't like how rough he was. He didn't like how delicate I was. After we both differentiated, we hardly saw each other again. He was never among my potential marriage matches. Father had said, "You two are clearly incompatible. Let it go." But now, it couldn't be let go. "I'll take responsibility," Stephen said. I poked my head out of the blanket and looked at him, still smiling as usual. Suddenly, he leaned forward on one hand and teased, "Well, it was just a temporary mark. But if you want me to take responsibility, I'm not against it." He paused, noticing the look on my face, and said no more. "I'll take responsibility," I said, "but not right now. Let's make a deal." The moment I said it, the sparkle in Stephen's eyes dimmed. But he couldn't refuse me. He never could. With a sigh, he said under his breath, "You know I can't say no to you." Even the so-called mad dog of the empire had a soft side. When we were kids, we fought all the time, especially over food and toys. But in the end, he always let me win. He used to say, "Jasmine, I treat you so well. When we grow up, you should marry me." I'd snatch the better dessert out of his hand, lick my lips, and reply, "No. You're too grumpy. I like gentle people." His eyes always sparkled when I refused him. And the more I rejected him, the brighter they shone. Like it fueled his fire. Before we differentiated, we used to lie on the academy rooftop and stargaze. He told me he wanted to become the most powerful general in the empire. I told him I had no dreams. He just grinned wide and said, "It's okay. If you become an Omega, I'll protect you." No thanks. Later, his older brother died on the battlefield. The Chi family fell into chaos, and Stephen's differentiation came early. He had barely trained for 2 weeks before he was sent to war. By the time we met again, my family had already chosen Gautier as my arranged alpha. Stephen invited me to the rooftop again. But I was wearing a silk dress and didn't go up. Instead, I stood in the moonlight below and watched him. He was gentle. I liked him. I was talking about Gautier. He was strong too, a powerful alpha. Afraid Stephen wouldn't believe me, I emphasized it again. Stephen stared at me for a long moment, then said, "Okay." Then he smiled, bright and radiant, like a star. Just like he used to. Years passed. From the front lines came rumor after rumor, "The Chi family's alpha is insane. Did you hear? He injured General Gautier during a skirmish." Servants whispered behind closed doors. I said nothing. I set my teacup down gently and looked up at one of the maids. Yes, Gautier had gone to the front lines too. Before leaving, he had promised to bring me a big bouquet of jasmine upon his return. That alone was enough to make my heart tighten with fear. What if something happened to him? But when he came back, he was perfectly unharmed. While Stephen was covered in wounds, lying unconscious in the med bay. The contrast couldn't have been starker. At the victory banquet, Gautier stood tall and proud, clinking glasses with dignitaries and nobles. Meanwhile, the so-called madman of the empire, Stephen, remained unconscious. When I heard the news, I ran barefoot through the estate, so panicked I forgot even a coat. And there, in the garden, I saw her. Jessica. She was laughing, clinging to Gautier's arm. When he saw me, he furrowed his brow. The butler, ever sharp, quickly stepped in and escorted me back to my chambers. I changed into proper shoes and returned to the banquet hall. The guests had already left. The air was thick with the scent of red wine. Jessica stood timidly at Gautier's side, trying to hide behind the cloak that technically still bore my name as his Omega fiancé. When Gautier saw her do that, his eyes turned soft, just like the first time we met. He took her hand and introduced her to me. That was when it started. No, perhaps it began the moment he left for the battlefield. The scale in his heart had already tipped in another direction. "She's Jessica," he said. "From a distant galaxy. I met her on the battlefield. Jasmine, I hope you'll take good care of her." Thinking of all the absurdities, of my past and present, I almost laughed. It cost me a life and a gland to finally see this man for what he truly was, a hypocrite dressed in grace. "Where's your head at?" Stephen leaned in and flicked the tip of my nose, trying to pull me back from the weight of old memories. I smiled faintly and said nothing. After gathering our things, Stephen and I boarded a small hovercraft and circled through the capital until we arrived at my family home. Ever since surveillance footage showed me being taken away by an unfamiliar alpha the day before, the entire capital had been thrown into chaos. Rumors spread wildly across the interstellar net. My father was pacing back and forth in the receiving hall, fists clenched tight. The moment he saw us step inside, that fist swung straight at Stephen's face. Stephen didn't dodge. He took the hit squarely. "You little bastard," my father roared, veins bulging with fury. His eyes blazed, and for a moment, I thought he was going to smash a chair over Stephen's head. "Father, it's all my fault," I quickly stepped between them. "Don't blame Stephen." My father exhaled sharply but relented. He looked at the two of us, standing there, hand in hand, and his tone softened into something heavy with emotion. "Your father passed away early. I practically watched you grow up. So why didn't you say anything before? Why wait until the very last moment to snatch Jasmine from the Gautier family?" Feeling guilty, I moved a little closer to Stephen. He squeezed my hand gently, offering silent reassurance. Uncle, he said, steady and calm. It's because I wasn't willing to let her go. I love Jasmine. His every word struck me like a warm breeze, gently soothing the old wounds in my heart. My father looked between us again, as if something finally clicked in his mind. He turned to me. And you, Jasmine? Why did you choose to go with him? Why did I turn to the boy I once thought I hated the most? Was it because I had no other way out, or had I, deep down, always hoped he would be the one to save me? That night, when I had fled the mansion, he had just returned from the battlefield, dragging his exhausted body past the brilliantly lit Gautier estate. I tightened my grip on Stephen's hand and looked my father in the eye. Because I love him. My father chuckled, then rubbed his brow and sank back into his wooden chair. All right, he muttered, waving a hand. No more for now. A bit of the weight in my chest finally lifted. I grabbed Stephen's hand and turned to leave. Just as we reached the front gates of the estate, we ran into Gautier. He adjusted his signature monocle, the one he always wore with such poise. But now, his expression showed the first flicker of embarrassment. My Omega. He trailed off, then caught himself. He reached out, as if to brush the hair by my temple, just like he used to, but the moment he caught a whiff of another alpha's scent on me, he froze and quickly pulled back. How could this happen? He asked. You disappeared last night. I was worried. He tried to mask his awkwardness with concern. But Stephen simply laced his fingers through mine with practiced ease. Well, he said cheerfully, someone's skills were so lacking that this poor Omega had to seek help from another alpha. In short, you couldn't satisfy her, he added, eyes full of mischief. Gautier's lips thinned. Mr. Chi, he said coolly, have you heard the saying, a gentleman helps others achieve their happiness, a petty man steals it for himself? You've publicly stolen my fiancé. That is hardly honorable. The air between them thickened with tension, alpha pheromones clashing violently, sparking an invisible standoff. But when their eyes shifted toward me, they both drew back. I was distracted last night, Gautier said, slipping back into his usual calm. Too many guests. Jasmine, let's go home. He extended a gloved hand, just like he always had in the past. I turned my head away in disgust and tightened my grip on Stephen. In a situation like this, Gautier would never willingly let go of someone like me. Even if I'd been tainted, I was still a valuable pawn in a strategic marriage. He wasn't an only son. There were many illegitimate heirs in the Gautier family. But as long as he held on to me, he could maintain his advantage in the fight for inheritance. I won't let you get what you want, I said coldly. There's nothing between us anymore. Consider it my own doing. I love him. I don't love you. Gautier's calm expression almost cracked. In the past, I never would have said something like that. Back then, I was like a parasitic vine, clinging to him, looking up at him with eyes full of dependency. And he? He basked in that control. He believed I'd never leave him. But we're already engaged, he insisted. I believe once you've played around enough, you'll come back. The Gautier family will always welcome you. He spoke as if I had no say in it. Jasmine, Gautier is your rightful home. His words made me want to vomit. I turned my face away. Stephen raised an eyebrow. Gautier, this really should depend on what Jasmine wants, shouldn't it? And she clearly likes me. You said it yourself, a gentleman doesn't steal what someone else treasures. Besides, Jasmine and I. Stephen, I hissed, pinching him before he could go too far. Gautier's lips curled into a faint, condescending smile. A temporary mark, nothing more, he said. I'm sure Mr. Chi has no intention of making this a scandal. That smug, calculated tone, that was Gautier's true self. Smooth, measured, and always confident that he held the upper hand. Well, he said, adjusting his monocle again. Once our little Jasmine has had her fun, I'm sure she'll return. Enjoy yourselves. He turned to walk back inside. I almost laughed, wondering what would happen when he faced my father. Stephen, piloting the hovercraft with one hand, gently stroked the back of my hand with the other. Do you think your father's on his side or mine? He asked, a teasing note in his voice. He didn't wait for me to answer. Doesn't matter, he said after a pause, a quiet smile rising in his eyes. I'm on your side. After a while, I said, let's go to the lab. There's something I urgently need to do. He glanced at me. I agreed to your deal, he said. But you're not allowed to do anything dangerous. Or the deal's off. I told him I needed to go to the Chi family's private laboratory. After a moment of thought, he nodded. I'd been wondering, perhaps my rebirth wasn't just fate, it was a chance. The pain buried deep in my memories needed to surface. And maybe, just maybe, my mental strength was different now. Even if my physical body was weaker than an alpha's, I could carve a new path and get what I wanted. The lab was located in a remote town, no towering buildings, no bustling traffic. It was hidden underground, the air damp and heavy. We walked through several layers of transparent corridors before the view suddenly opened up. Can I come here alone in the future? I asked. Stephen nodded with a sulky expression, then recorded my fingerprint and iris data into the system. The rumored mad dog of the Empire had a secret underground lab. The Chi family's army was self-built, ruthless, effective, and wherever they passed, not a single bug survived. Stephen was often away on interstellar patrols. During those times, I came alone to collect information, run tests, and participate in the experiments myself. The confidentiality fees were high, but after inspecting my mental structure, the research doctor, an experiment-obsessed man, reluctantly agreed. There were countless Omega modification projects. Nowadays, some Omegas could even disguise themselves as betas and go into battle. As long as their mental strength was powerful enough, they could pilot mechas and do what they never could before. That's what I wanted, to modify myself. To gain the power to protect myself in this ruthless world. Stephen was gone for a longer stretch this time. It gave me just enough time to join the formal enhancement plan. The doctor injected a clear serum into the tissue beneath my skin. And then, I lost consciousness completely. In the haze, memories surfaced again. I missed Stephen. I didn't want him to get hurt. In 2 years, the interstellar war would begin. Stephen, defending the front lines, would be critically injured by the Zerg and fall into a coma. Even after the war ended, he never woke up. The process of reinforcing my mental entity felt like tormenting my soul with painful memories. One injection after another was pushed into my veins. Through the cycles of fainting and awakening, I anchored myself to a single thought: this was my own choice. I had to rely on my own strength. Even if I failed, I would have no regrets. I had no idea how much time passed before I finally opened my eyes inside the experimental chamber. My first instinct was to reach for the gland behind my neck. It was still there. I could barely remember the incident in my past life when it had been removed. But just before I passed out this time, the lead surgeon had lifted his mask, and I recognized him. He was Jessica's lackey, the imperial physician who often roamed the manor, always bringing her rare and exotic items. Just thinking about it made my chest tighten. Miss Jasmine, the experiment was a success. The current doctor pressed a button expertly and opened the chamber for me. Dr. Lin was deeply obsessed with human experimentation. According to him, he had never performed a spiritual enhancement on an Omega before. When I brought up the idea, he was surprised, then excited. "You're sure? Really sure you want to go through with it?" So we signed a confidentiality agreement. Swore secrecy. If I failed and never woke up, he could keep the deposit and find another test subject. But I trusted him. His name had been well known even in my previous life. If I failed, it would be on me. If I succeeded, then great. When the first set of readings came in, he stared at the numbers in disbelief. "Your mental entity is incredibly strong. After this enhancement, I'm genuinely excited to see what you can do. You'll be able to pilot a mech, right?" "More than enough," I replied. But the process had taken a while. At first, I lied, saying I didn't want to leave the house or see anyone. My father had no way of forcing me. Stephen came several times, but I never opened the door. Even Gautier left, tail between his legs, returning to the Hua family. Then, a few days later, I told them I had signed up for an interstellar travel program and would be away for a long time. When Dr. Lin told me about all this, his fingers were visibly trembling. But thankfully, we had kept the secret well. "And that fiancé of yours, he's not doing so well lately," Dr. Lin added with a smirk. "The Hua family's illegitimate son snatched a bunch of resources, and your ex-fiancé has been running to your place non-stop. Looks like he sees you as his last lifeline." He was practically holding back laughter. A little schadenfreude, maybe. But I couldn't help smiling too. After all, with the family business crumbling and the engagement ruined, Gautier must be having a rough time. That alone made me genuinely happy. But just as I stepped out of the lab, I saw Stephen standing there, looking hurt. He was still wearing his military uniform. "So, the moment your trip ends, you come running to see Dr. Lin?" he asked, voice low. "I tried visiting you, and you wouldn't even let me in." For some reason, he seemed oddly hostile toward Dr. Lin. I cleared my throat and replied casually, "Well, I needed to relax a little. The whole travel group was full of Omegas. If you had shown up, wouldn't you have scared them?" "Protecting Omegas is every interstellar citizen's duty," he said with a wounded tone. "And you didn't even come give me a hug." I froze. Since when had he become so clingy? "You have no idea how much I missed you these past few days," he muttered. "Do you know how tightly that bastard Hua kept an eye on you? Damn it, the engagement almost didn't fall through." As he spoke, I leaned in and hugged his solid chest, whispering, "Thank you." Oh. Apparently, the spiritual reinforcement hadn't gone entirely unnoticed. Steven sniffed the back of my neck repeatedly. Not sensing anything unusual, he finally relaxed. Then, like a clingy child, he buried his face in my shoulder, breathing me in. Jasmine, you smell so good. When will you let me fully mark you? Didn't you say you'd take responsibility for me? His voice was tinged with frustration and a hint of grievance. Who would have thought that someone once known as the Empire's madman could act so sweetly clingy? I didn't say no. But when he tried to inject his pheromones into my gland, what's going on, Jasmine? Why can't I mark you? It didn't work. His pheromones filled the entire bedroom, intermingling with the soft scent of jasmine. Just then, a message popped up on the wrist device nearby. Dr. Lin, Miss Jasmine, for the next few days, please avoid being marked by Mr. Chi. Your mental power has not yet stabilized. Also, your pheromone levels are oversaturated, marking attempts will fail. Silence. Only the sound of our breathing remained. Tell me what this means, Steven said, letting go of me. His hand touched the back of my neck, where a faint bite mark still lingered. The gland was full, firm, and radiating with jasmine-scented pheromones. Damn that Dr. Lin, he muttered. He waits until now to tell me this. Oh. I'm doomed. I met Steven's cooling gaze and gave him a sheepish smile. Oops. I trimmed the details a little when I told you about the experiment. Suddenly, he pulled me into a tight hug. His voice trembled, barely noticeable. You don't understand how dangerous that was. So many never wake up from that operating table. Don't do it again. But I wanted to protect myself, and protect you. I ran my fingers through his hair, whispering gently. But, there's no but, I cut him off. I'm standing right here, in front of you. You can feel my mental strength. I released my newly enhanced spiritual energy. My mental tendrils reached out and touched his, strong and powerful. I can even pilot a mech now. I smiled proudly at him. He stayed silent for a long moment, then gripped the back of my head and kissed me. His pheromones, once restrained, now surged in the air, drenching me completely. He couldn't mark me physically, so he chose another way to leave his mark. When I woke up, my lower back was sore. The scent of magnolia, faint and aloof, still lingered. Steven had already left, busy with his duties. But on the nearby glass table sat a warm meal and a handwritten note. As I walked barefoot across the soft carpet, a small smile curved at my lips. My family was in the mech business. The things I wanted, I would soon have. As for my physical endurance, well, that would just have to improve day by day. When my father heard I needed a mecha, he handed me a key and told me to choose one from the warehouse. To protect the more advanced and expensive models, our mecha storage was located in the outskirts of the capital. For one, the land was cheaper, allowing us to build a larger space. And second, it was easier to station mercenaries for protection. But unfortunately, I ran into the Hua family, who were also there to pick up supplies. To support the front lines, our family ran a production line for both combat and defensive mechas. The Huas, lacking the necessary materials, had no choice but to procure them from us. Gautier was supervising the delivery. When he saw me walk in, his gold-rimmed glasses caught the light as his eyes narrowed. Jasmine. How was your interstellar trip? He sounded confident, as if I'd come here just to see him. Divine gold, I replied, ignoring him, and held up my warehouse key. A mechanical assistant immediately stepped forward to guide me inside. His expression froze. Jasmine, he called again, unwilling to let it go. He reached out to grab me, but my spiritual force reacted on instinct and pushed him back. He stood there stunned for a moment, murmuring, "How does an Omega like you have such powerful spiritual strength?" I didn't see the dark glint that crept into his eyes. I walked straight into the warehouse. There were many kinds of mechas, but I needed one that could fight and take hits. Eventually, I locked eyes on a half-repaired model in the hands of a mecha engineer. "Modify this one," I said. "Make it suit me. You name your price." After I entered my biometric data on the panel, the engineer took the commission and got to work. For the next 2 days, I focused on improving my physical strength, training in the virtual simulation chamber to ensure smooth compatibility with the mecha. But just as I received the modified unit, war broke out on the front lines. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Word reached the capital star like lightning. It was that imperial madman who had provoked the Zerg. Rumors spread like wildfire. A bucket of ice-cold water dumped over my head. The interstellar war had come early. And the one who'd cuddled in my neck and whispered sweet nothings not long ago, had become the man who started it all. Impossible. I boarded the nearest starship with my mecha and headed for planet Papatia. As we approached, space debris grew thicker and thicker. The entire galaxy was shrouded in death. "Please, let my love be safe." Piloting my mecha across the desolate terrain, I remembered how just last week, Chicha had messaged me. "Make sure you eat well," he'd said. Here on this lifeless world, the corpses of Zerg beasts were already rotting. No signs of intense combat. It was as if someone had crushed them effortlessly. I scanned the area for life signs. There were none. My heart sank. I sent him message after message, but none were returned. The last one still said, "Make sure you eat well." The moment that thought hit me, I broke down crying. Even after strengthening my spiritual body, I was still just as fragile. Wiping away tears, I gritted my teeth and ran further into the wilderness. I didn't care. I would find him. My mecha had been upgraded with long-term supplies and fuel. I kept telling myself, he's still out there. And then, the Zerg returned. My spiritual force surged, controlling the mecha in a precise, deadly strike. One hit. Kill confirmed. Just wait for me a little longer, Steven. The light on this planet was fading fast. A patrol pod finally located me. "Is anyone there?" a voice crackled over comms. They found me, one girl, one mecha, standing amidst the ruins. A transport beam descended, and I returned to the ship with the rescue team. It was the Chi family's fleet. But Steven wasn't on it. "Colonel Chi is missing," one of his subordinates told me gently. "Please try not to worry. We will find him." But even he looked pale and uncertain. Not long after, a second ship from the capital star arrived. They had sent Gautier and a team of high-ranking officials to coordinate. Since the Zerg had been completely wiped out, they decided to abandon the search. "After Steven provoked the war, he went missing," Gautier said. "With the Zerg rampaging, the planet shows no signs of life. Continuing the search would be pointless." He was the first to suggest it. I stared at him in disbelief. He averted his gaze. How dare he? How dare he slander a true soldier of the Empire like that? "We'll finalize the list tonight. Return trip departs tomorrow." Pain lanced through my chest. A suffocating pressure seized my nerves. As the others filed out of the room, I stayed behind in the conference hall, sitting in silence, head bowed, clutching my chest. "Jasmine," Gautier said with a smile, reaching out his hand. "Let's go home." I saw the blood soaking through his white gloves and felt bile rise in my throat. "Get away from me." I slapped his hand aside, struggling to breathe. He didn't get angry. Instead, he gripped my hand tighter. "I know, Jasmine," he murmured. "You've changed. You must have remembered something. But it's fine, that's all in the past now. As long as we both forget, everything will be fine." He patted my back again and again, like he was soothing a child. I stared at him in shock. He raised a finger to his lips. "Shh." And in that moment, everything clicked. It was like an invisible force grabbed hold of me, dragging me into the fog. But I wasn't willing to give in. I glared at him and spat each word out coldly. "Let me say this again. Don't touch me with your filthy hands." I pried his fingers away one by one, but his strength was greater than mine. I struggled hard as he bound me with both arms, whispering in my ear like a demon. "Jasmine, just accept it. You only have me now." "Bullshit." I screamed. "I'm going to find Steven. He's still alive." I couldn't break free, so I bit down, hard. At the same time, I released my spiritual power little by little, waiting for a chance. Gautier must have realized something. He sent out his own psychic tendrils to try and stop me. But I didn't let him. In the windowpane, our struggle reflected back at us. The next moment, my energy exploded. He was thrown to the floor. "You took part in the enhancement experiments," I sneered, watching him lie sprawled on the cold metal tiles. He stared at me in disbelief. His elbow had hit the ground first, and his face twisted in pain. "What's it got to do with you?" he rasped. Before I could answer, a dark-haired girl appeared. She saw Gautier on the ground and panicked. She turned and ran. I didn't care. I summoned my mecha and fled the ship. Borrowing a small cabin pod, I returned to planet Papatia. That desolate, alien place. I could barely breathe. I was terrified Steven had died there, alone, on a strange planet, his body never recovered. He was a hero. Why did they call him the Empire's mad dog? Wasn't he the one who protected everyone? Grief surged out of me. I sobbed, alone, my mecha standing silent beside me. Dust swept past. A storm was coming. I hid behind a rocky cliff, waiting for it to pass. I had been searching this area for 2 days. My overused spiritual sense picked up faint signs of life. It was my only hope. I couldn't give up now. I was too afraid, of having nothing left at all. Crack. I stepped on a mutant scorpion by accident. Suddenly, a weak distress signal came through the comms. I turned in that direction, my heart racing. Inside a broken, half-ruined shuttle lay several wounded soldiers. When they saw me, one of them raised his head weakly. "Is the Empire finally here to rescue us?" I froze. They were Steven's men. "Our ship was attacked by the Zerg," one of them said, voice trembling. "We kept sending distress signals, but no one ever responded. We thought we were all going to die out here. There was no sign of Stephen among them. I forced myself to stay calm, though my voice shook uncontrollably. I'll bring the rescue ship closer and set up a return route. Once it's ready, you can all leave safely. Then I asked, where's your captain? They fell silent. Their eyes lowered. The captain went east, one of them murmured. He was trying to boost the signal. That was 2 days ago. I left them some supplies. Did the Empire abandon us? One of them asked bitterly. No, I said firmly, even as my throat ached. You're heroes. The Empire doesn't forget its heroes. I controlled my mecha, unloading the crates of supplies one by one, then turned east. Toward the only hope I had left. The path was littered with the corpses of Zerg beasts. I stumbled through the wreckage, running toward a future I couldn't yet see. And then, I saw him. My lover sat slumped against a pile of Zerg carcasses, bathed in the fading light of the twin suns. A star-forged blade rested loosely in his hand. Blood had long since dried on his forehead. His chest was soaked with colorless stains. The once clean lines of his face were now hidden beneath grime and ash. His mecha lay toppled beside him, dented and lifeless. A few remaining Zerg tried to lunge at him. I didn't hesitate, my mecha moved on instinct, shielding him, cutting the monsters down with a single sweep. I scooped him up, flying toward the damaged shuttle I'd seen earlier. He didn't even react. Just sat there blankly in my mecha's palm, staring at nothing. The small rescue craft I'd parked before arrived automatically, following its return coordinates. When Stephen's men saw him alive, they cried out, some trying to get up from their stretchers despite their injuries. I lowered him gently to the ground, opened the shuttle's hatch, and told them to get in. He refused to move. Stayed perched in my mechanical hand like a stubborn child. Down, I ordered softly. No. So, I tilted the mecha's hand and shook him off. He looked up at me, dirty and bloodstained, eyes full of wordless reproach, yet somehow still beautiful. After leaving planet Papatia, the small shuttle docked with the Chi family's flagship, which had been waiting nearby. Stephen and his men were taken for treatment. I removed my mecha suit and returned to the rest quarters, where exhaustion dragged me into a deep, dreamless sleep. In truth, I wasn't gravely injured, just drained from overusing my spiritual power. The real heroes were those who had fought and bled on the front lines. If not for them, I'd still be out there, fighting the endless swarm. Eventually, my father found out about everything I'd kept from him. He stormed into the Chi family estate, pointing at the still recovering Stephen and shouting furiously, "You brat. Didn't we agree on this before? Huh?" I opened the bedroom door, weary beyond words. "Father, please, stop scolding him. It was my choice. None of this is his fault." He turned to me, frustrated, eyes full of disappointment. "You tell me, if not for him, then for who? Don't tell me you did all this for your old man." "For myself," I said quietly. "Every decision I've ever made was for myself. Saving Stephen was my choice, too." Stephen, still pale but composed, poured a pot of tea and brought it over. My father, parched from yelling, reluctantly took a few sips. When he finished, Stephen held my hand tightly and said with solemn respect, "Please rest assured, father-in-law. I'll protect Jasmine with my life." Who would have thought, the same man who once stood unshaken on the battlefield had been sitting by my bedside while I was unconscious, scolding me like a worried fool. "Jasmine," he had murmured back then, "didn't you promise not to do dangerous things? If something happened to you, I wouldn't be able to live either." I'd been too tired to even lift my eyelids. If I hadn't been, I would have told him to shut up and let me sleep. But he had clung to my hand, watching me, whispering "I love you" between complaints. And crying like I'd broken his heart. Still, there's no denying the difference between an alpha and an omega's body. I stayed in bed for days, too weak to move. He was back on his feet within 24 hours. My father, overhearing his words, rolled his eyes. All right. I won't meddle in you two anymore. But listen, both of you did well this time. Stephen, when you're out there fighting again, remember the people waiting behind you. Take care of yourself. And Jasmine, after your mother passed, I've always felt guilty for not being there for you. But you've grown up so fast. You've got your own mind now. I shouldn't have tried to bind you with that engagement. That was my mistake." He paused, eyes misting over. "When you went away on that trip, I thought a lot about things. I won't interfere in your life anymore. Just promise me you'll take care of yourself." I nodded softly, poured him another cup of tea, and listened as he reminisced. Then his tone shifted. "That boy from the Hua family, serves him right. Good thing you didn't marry into that mess." At the mention of Gautier, I froze for a second, unsure what to say. But a faint smile still tugged at my lips. I could only remember how that day, Gautier had looked exactly like the poisonous aristocrat from my memories. And since I remembered everything now, there was no way he was innocent. Days later, while I was helping Stephen recover at home, Gautier showed up at my door. His beard was unkempt, his eyes wild. The moment he saw me, he lunged forward like a madman. Jasmine. Come with me, just for a walk. I looked at his disheveled state and laughed. My alpha isn't you. Why can't you accept that? Stephen had already come to my side, drawn by the noise. Gautier's voice trembled as he muttered, but we're the most compatible, aren't we? You remember, don't you? I met his gaze and smiled faintly. Oh, I remember. I remember you ordering someone to erase my mark, making me wish I were dead. I remember you bringing a beta home, forcing me to watch. I remember you threatening to tear out my gland for her sake. Gautier, I said coldly, a man shouldn't be so greedy, or so heartless. The pain you caused me, you'll have to repay it. Since you remember everything too, don't pretend to be innocent. And as for you slandering my alpha, I haven't even started with you for that. My glare was icy. He said nothing, but then, without warning, he drew a knife and plunged it into the gland at the back of his own neck. Blood splattered across the ground. The air filled with the metallic scent of fading pheromones. Stephen's expression didn't change. He simply pulled me into his arms, covering my eyes. Don't look, he whispered. It's filthy. Then he led me inside, closing the door. Shutting out Gautier, and everything he represented, once and for all. Through a narrow crack in the door, I caught a glimpse of Gautier's face, twisted in pain and despair. But that still wasn't enough. 2 days later, Gautier was arrested on charges of possessing interstellar restricted drugs, inciting chaos, and illegally imprisoning a beta. He had locked up a beta from another planet and injected them with banned substances. The rescued beta had long, black hair but was clearly mentally unstable, mumbling incoherently, I'm the heroine, let me go, don't touch me, get away, get away. The whistleblower was an imperial doctor. Gautier was sent to an interstellar prison, while the beta was transferred to the Empire's top hospital for intensive care. But the next day, Gautier escaped and took the beta with him. Their escape ship malfunctioned, struck by an asteroid, and both were reduced to nothing but cosmic debris. After all, getting Gautier locked away hadn't come easy. Back on the ship, I'd collected ample evidence of his framing and slandering Stephen. I had originally intended to bring this evidence back to the capital. But once I realized Gautier also retained memories of our past life, I no longer needed to hold back. I accidentally revealed the damning evidence to the Empire. Then I kindly gave him a chance to escape, and even offered a spaceship, all while publicly clarifying the rumors about the so-called madman of the Empire. As for the whistleblowing doctor, he was just another pawn, another fish caught in the net. Because after filing that report, he would have inevitably stepped on the toes of certain powerful people. Someone else would clean up that mess for me. Naturally, the doctor would vanish in some unknown, silent corner of the galaxy, or be locked away in a sunless manor, waiting to be slowly devoured. Calmly, I poured myself a cup of tea. Stephen watched me, saying nothing, but gently caressed the gland at the nape of my neck. Sometimes, he would press a soft kiss there, whispering, "It must have hurt a lot, didn't it?" I shook my head. It's all in the past now. Later, my father calmly pieced everything together, recounting the story with spit flying in all directions, grieving, outraged, just like his father. Hypocrite. That Gautier brat always overcharged me when he came to trade. Stephen's reputation had improved during this time too. The former Empire's mad dog had now become a world-saving hero. All the warriors who had fought on the front lines were honored for their bravery. Not only had they repelled the Zerg, but they also signed a ceasefire treaty. I once asked Stephen how he recognized me that day. He said, "You were staggering toward me, shielding me with your body. I knew it had to be you." I didn't want to get off the true hero's back, he added, pouting. But you shook me off. I rolled my eyes. I wanted everyone to know, the most powerful one is my wife. I elbowed him playfully. Ow, ow, that hurts, he whimpered, full of wounded puppy energy. Then I looked at him seriously. Now that the deal's over, what do you want in return? He gently touched the wound at his waist, then lowered his head. Can I redeem it later? He asked, nestling his face against the side of my neck. Please. Maybe. Quietly, the house filled with the scent of jasmine and magnolia blossoms. Stephen snuck up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, inhaling the top of my head. Still not as fragrant as my wifey. His voice was soft as he led me into the living room. My subordinates brought a few gifts. The room was filled with weighty tokens of gratitude. Well, he said, eyes twinkling. You've seen theirs. Now look at mine. He pulled out a beautiful ring and slid it onto my ring finger. That night. Wifey, he whispered sweetly, voice syrupy and eyes gleaming like a puppy's, you said you'd fulfill your promise. I stroked his hair and, without realizing, murmured my heart's true thoughts aloud. He wagged his head and barked softly, like a spoiled pup, then tightened his hold, lifting me into his arms. I looked down at him. His eyes, glittering with stardust, held only me. Then, do what you want to do. That night, the scent of jasmine and magnolia swirled through the room. Our noses were filled with each other's pheromones. The soft, sweet magnolia intertwined with the delicate fragrance of jasmine. Our fingers laced tightly together, two rings glinting side by side, forever joined. Somewhere between wakefulness and dreams, Stephen nuzzled into my hair. Wifey, you smell so good. Woof. Wifey. I love you. I love you too.